session.
I'm saying this because as Baha'is, we believe that love, fellowship, and unity must prevail in the world, because this is the day in which God's holy manifestations appeared to establish these principles in the world so that there will be no more problems amongst the peoples of the world.
Ningewaambieni ya kwamba chanzo cha imani ya Bahai.
Hand of the Cause John Robarts was a third hand of the cause at this marvellous gathering. Together they were appointed by Shoghi Effendi in October 1957 as part of the third and final contingent of Hands of the Cause of God, representing the continent of Africa. 19 years later, in Kenya, they came together.
Allahu Akbar. Ya Baha'il Akbar. Ya Aliyul Allah. Ya Sahibul Zaman. All battle cries for the spiritual conquest of the hearts of men. Beloved friends, I would, before speaking about anything, like to express my loving appreciation for all of the beautiful flowers and for all of the lovely things we see everywhere in this hall. Everything is filled with memories. Everywhere I look to the greatest name, and I can remember the words of the beloved guardian when I was in the Holy Land on pilgrimage. He said, ours was a faith of superlatives. That's why we say the greatest name, the most great peace, the greatest holy leaf, the most great prison. Superlative. There are no words to say who Baha'u'llah is or what our cause is. If there were better words, we would use those, but we use the best the language has, superlatives.
A few weeks ago, my wife and I were at the Alaskan conference, and it was a glorious one too. It was a 3-day conference of the Indians and Eskimos of Alaska. And when they learned that we were coming on to this conference, the native people asked us to bring their loving greetings to all of you, but they said they would be praying fervently for the success of this conference.
Mr. Masoud Homsi, counselor residing in South America, accompanied Bolivian friends gathered for a conference. Subsequently, they were greeted individually by Hand of the Cause, Mr. Abul Qasim Faizi. Mr. Faizi explained the basic teachings of the faith to these simple and pure-hearted individuals.
My name is Martha Many Gray Horses. I'm from Cardston, Alberta, Canada. I live in Washington, D.C. Baha'u'llah answered my prayers. I've arrived home.
This conference of native Baha'is of North America was a most moving occasion, as individual native Indians conveyed their heartfelt emotions to the audience.
What a conference, what a night. I tell you, I couldn't sleep last night. And at 4 or 5, I was awake and prayed. I wanted to express last night my feeling in that powwow. Am I right, powwow?
You're right. Right, perfect.
Well, we may call it the powwow of Baha'u'llah. Abdul Baha tells us, what shall we say? Abdul Baha spoke about your destiny. He was not kidding. Do we believe it? I think that our beloved National Spiritual Assemblies of Alaska, Canada, and United States, they were inspired. Baha'u'llah had a wonderful purpose through this conference. They were inspired, and their inspiration moved the Supreme Body of the Faith, the Universal House of Justice, to send their special representative, our beloved Amos Gibson, here to share in this conference, the spirit of the conference.
Every 5 years, during the month of April, the members of National Spiritual Assemblies from around the world gather to cast their ballots for the 9 members of the Universal House of Justice, the supreme body of the Baha'i faith. Though not voting, the Hands of the Cause of God participated in these events in their capacity as members of the learned arm of the faith, and also observed the celebrations of the Festival of Rezvan, which mark Baha'u'llah's proclamation in Baghdad in April 1863. On the occasion of the International Convention of 1973, in the setting of the historical Baha'i Gardens in the Holy Land, the Hands of the Cause of God found some time to interview one another.
It's a great joy and blessing to be in the Rizwan Garden, listening to the sound of the birds, and to have the pleasure of being with Mr. Paul Haney. Not too many years ago, we did a similar interview in 1953 when this great world plan was launched, the 10-year plan. And I thought it would be marvelous if Paul, who at that time was not only a hand of the cause, but chairman of the National Assembly of the United States, involved with the administration for such a long time, if he'd tell us something about the rise of this administrative order, which, as we all know, is truly the hope of the world. Paul?
Well, actually, the administrative order goes back to the days of Baha'u'llah, when he appointed 4 hands of the cause in his own lifetime. And then in the days of Abdul Baha, the master devoted so much time and effort to establishing the local spiritual assemblies, the boards of consultation, and in training them and teaching them in the true purpose of their existence. And then in the days following the master, the beloved guardian continued to expand the foundations of the administrative order by encouraging the formation of local assemblies. And then in the early 1920s, it came to the point where the number of Baha'i groups, assemblies throughout the world was sufficiently large to permit the formation of national spiritual assemblies. And then finally, in 1953, a date that Mr. Sears referred to at the beginning, the development of the administrative order throughout the world had reached the point where the Baha'i world could, under the guidance and leadership of the beloved guardian, embark on a world crusade. And then, at the conclusion of this world crusade, 56 national spiritual assemblies were established throughout the world, 56 pillars of the Universal House of Justice, and in 1963, at the end of that first worldwide plan, the crowning unit of the administrative order of the faith, the Universal House of Justice, was brought into being, was elected, and from that time until the present, the Universal House of Justice launched and carried out the second global plan, the first one under the aegis of the House of Justice itself, the 9-year plan, and that has resulted in raising the number of national spiritual assemblies in the world to 113.
It's very exciting. Could I just say probably a few words as we come to the end of this, that to be the other day on the site of Mount Carmel and seat of the Universal House of Justice, so near to where Baha'u'llah chanted the Tablet of Carmel, the charter of our world institutions, and the marvelous excitement of it all. And then from there I went down to visit the tomb of the greatest holy leaf. It, of course, was a convention of highlights, but one of the most moving moments for me was when we were all gathered there to dedicate the site of the seat of the Universal House of Justice and heard the words of the Tablet of Carmel chanted on that spot, so near to where Baha'u'llah himself chanted it, this tremendous charter of our world institutions for the conquest of the planet. I think probably the thing that moved me most of Baha'u'llah's words at that time was that how he longed to carry the message himself to every city and to every spot on the surface of the world. And I had the feeling that all these national assemblies and continental boards of councillors gathered there with the hands of the cause under the guidance of the House of Justice were going to do just exactly that. And as I was thinking of that, I remembered my last visit to right down the side of the mountain to the shrine of the greatest holy leaf, which the beloved guardian said was a symbol of our administrative order, with the steps, the local assemblies, the pillars, the national assemblies, and now the dome of the Universal House of Justice was on. I was waiting to take pictures, and it was raining very hard. The water was coming down the dome, down the pillars, through the assemblies, out into the garden. And I thought of the words of the beloved guardian when he said that when the Universal House of Justice comes into existence, that it will shed its healing waters upon the warring peoples and nations of the earth, wash away the evils and iniquities of the realm of dust, and heal man's age-old ills and ailments. And I could see that water coming down from the dome through the national assemblies to the local assemblies, out into the garden, and there were red flowers and green flowers and yellow flowers, and it was just so beautiful. And it said it would usher in an era the like of which the eyes of men had never seen. And as I stood on the mountain, I knew Baha'u'llah said all the prophecies were fulfilled. They were all completed as they stood on that mountain, and I knew that was what was going to happen to the world. It was going to be like this garden. Just very moving and exciting moment.
I'd actually like to explain that we all know that Baha'u'llah is the promised one, is the awaited one of the nations of the world, is the King of Kings. As a Christian, I was born a Christian. My parents were Christians of the Church of England. We are always expecting the return of Christ. And we're being taught in our church every time. And at the time I was drawing nigh when Jesus would return to earth, when I ran into a young man, a brilliant young man from Persia, Ali Nakhtubani. It was really Ali who first told me about Baha'u'llah in Kampala, Uganda. And he told me that Baha'u'llah, among other things, had said that he was the promised one of all ages, the return of the divine or spiritual reality of the manifestations of the past. That included Jesus Christ. And that struck me very much. And I was keenly interested to find more. Then Ali told me that it was one of the Baha'i principles that each and every individual should investigate the truth for themselves. So I began to look into it. You know, the future of the African continent or the African people is bright. There's no doubt about that. But I might as well add that Baha'u'llah has come for the people of the world, for the tribes, the races, and the nations of the world, and not for one particular continent or tribe. Right. He has come to rebuild the world. Indeed, is the Lord of the world, the Lord of the universe.
That one of the interesting things that I've heard you talk about many times, and that is your love for Mother Dunn.
The two Dunns are quite unique in the sense that Father Dunn gave Mother Dunn the message in the early 1900s and she was Mrs. Davis in those days. And then in the 1918, after the passing of Mr. Dunn's wife, these two married, and they arose in the call of the Tablets of the Divine Plan and came to Australia. They caused the formation of the National Assembly of Australia. Father Don died in 1942, and in 1951 Mother was made a hand. And just at that time also, the Guardian announced that Father Dunn was posthumously regarded as a hand. And when Mother passed away, she was just before she was to see the temple, and she was within 1 hour's journey. So in Australia we have two hands of the cause lying together as a joint grave as the pioneers of one of the 5 continents. They're quite unique.
The point that interested me about Mother Dunn was the fact that she said that this was the worst thing that had ever happened to her. She said, you know, I'm so completely unworthy to be a hand. And I wasn't a hand myself at that time, and I said, well, I'm sure all the hands must feel that. But really it was the beloved Guardian who knew the people.
She had tremendous endowments to be a pioneer with her husband.
I had the privilege also that I met him at the first conclave of the hands here in Holy Land. When she came, she was one of the 26 hands in the first conclave after the accession of beloved Guardian. That was the first time I met her here. It's wonderful.
John, during the course of your travels, I noticed you've spoken quite a bit along obligatory prayer and prayers in general. Have you found any reaction from the believers?
Oh yes, I've had some wonderful reaction. Just yesterday, here at this convention, I met a man I hadn't seen for many years, and he's from some country down in northeast Africa. I don't know just what country it is, but he came up to me and he said, "Oh, Mr. Robarts, when you were down in our country 13 years ago, you gave us a talk on the long obligatory prayer. Do you remember it?" And I said, "Yes, I remember it." Well, he said, "Do you know that from that moment I started saying that prayer, and it has completely changed my life." And he said the wonderful things that have happened.